Firefighters are regularly exposed to chemicals, metals and minerals that are known to cause cancer. This silent threat is a fact of the job we do. It's also a fact that firefighters are more likely to develop some cancers than the rest of the population as a result of this exposure. That's the bad news. But the good news is that there are things we can do to reduce our exposure to cancer-causing substances. And there are also things we can do to stop those substances getting through our skin and into our lungs when we can't avoid being exposed to them. The fire service is totally committed to reducing this risk. Our vision for 2020 is leading integrated fire and emergency services for a safer New Zealand. And one of the most important goals within that vision is improving our people's safety. We know that reducing exposure and contamination from carcinogens can't be solved by one group working alone. So we've set up a program of work involving people from right across the fire service. This includes expertise on operations, protective equipment, safety and wellbeing, fleet and property. This work program is fully supported by the Firefighters Union and the UFBA. That's our commitment to you. And now we need you, as firefighters, to commit 100% to doing things better too.
My name is Mark Noble, and I'm a firefighter, and I'm dying from a brain tumor. A brain tumor I most likely got from my job as a firefighter. I have been a firefighter for more than 19 years now. Exactly 11 months ago today, I had a little burning sensation on my face. I started getting some numbness down my arm and through my fingers, and then it would shoot down the side of my body. A friend who's a doctor suggested I go get a MRI. The good part was that they actually found some gray matter in there. The bad part was they found something else, about the size of a golf ball. The next week, I was up for brain surgery. The day before the surgery, I essentially had stroke symptoms, where I lost my left side, I couldn't control my mouth. They drilled a hole inside of my head and pulled some goop out. It was something called an Anaplastic Oligodendroglioma, which is a mouthful. And believe me, I had never heard of an Anaplastic Oligodendroglioma until that day. It took me several months before I could even pronounce it. I had the surgery, and about 2 weeks later, I went on to radiation, where they blasted radiation through my head 5 days a week for 7 weeks. I lost most of my hair. So that started my merry path with brain cancer.
Mark Noble's story is just one of many tragic stories of firefighters who've had their careers and often their lives ended by cancer. I expect most of you can think of a colleague who's been affected by the disease. The risk of being exposed to some terrible things is one that firefighters take every time they respond to an incident, but it is a risk that every firefighter is willing to take. As you've heard from Paul McGill, the United Fire Brigades Association is partnering with the fire service on a program to reduce exposure to and contamination from substances that are known to cause cancer in firefighters. You probably know that asbestos can cause cancer. Other minerals can too, such as silicates. Cancer-causing metals include lead, antimony and cadmium. And the carcinogenic chemicals firefighters are exposed to include benzene, formaldehydes, and other polyaromatic hydrocarbons, and volatile organic compounds. Firefighters are also exposed to diesel exhaust from fire trucks.
Last week I had this room scientifically analysed. And I'll now ask you to look around this room with me and see the materials that would produce highly toxic and carcinogenic compounds. The nylon carpet beneath you will produce hydrogen cyanide, carbon monoxide, blood asphyxiants, highly toxic compounds. It would also produce several polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. These PAHs, like naphthalene, benzopyrene, these are known carcinogens, known to cause cancer. The synthetic wall coverings around the room would burn and produce formaldehyde and benzene. Two known carcinogens. They would also produce acrolein, a severe irritant and highly toxic. If we then move to the ceiling and the electrical fittings in the ceiling and the wall spaces, they would combust and produce phosgene and hydrogen chloride. Those compounds were used previously as chemical warfare agents. The very chairs that you are sitting on, the foam and upholstery, will produce further hydrogen cyanide, ammonia, acrolein, nitrogen dioxide. The smoke detectors. The smoke detectors would burn and produce dioxin, pseudodioxins. These are known carcinogens in a group similar to Agent Orange.
The reason I'm sitting here today is that I want to prevent firefighters from getting brain cancer. I want to prevent them from getting non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I want to help them not to get liver cancer, bladder cancer, kidney cancer. These are all things we can empower ourselves to prevent. Since I've gotten this brain tumor, I've looked into the studies concerned with what it is that we're exposed to that's causing these cancers to kick off. One of the main ones is benzene. Boston did a study of 200 firefighters. They mounted air monitoring gear on the firefighters, and they found that benzene was detected in over 92% of the fires and at well above OSHA permissible levels. Buffalo found that benzene was second only to carbon monoxide, and they were finding benzene in low smoke environments. So we're talking about the fires where you go in and it's just something minor, pot on the stove where, nobody throws on an air pack for that. You can hardly see any smoke. And yet they have elevated benzene levels, which we're exposing ourselves to. Dallas, of 100 fires, benzene was found at all fires, regardless of the material burned. And plus they identified over 70 other organic chemicals, such as PCBs, in the products of combustion that we are exposed to. We have always considered the synthetics in modern construction so much more hazardous than combustibles in older buildings. And you think, what, I need an air pack for this type of fire for? You're wrong. Those houses also had tar in the roofs, and they also had insulation on wires. The older style construction with the more standardized combustibles and not the new modern hybrid materials are killing people just as fast. Asbestos is another we're exposed to. Studies in New York found very elevated levels during the overhaul phase of a fire. When we're digging around trying to figure out cause. The conventional wisdom has been with asbestos, it'll get in your lungs and you'll get asbestosis. That is a concern, but you don't need to have an elevated level of asbestos. Even small amounts are filtering from your lungs into your bloodstream and are triggering cancers in your body. We may think, oh, there's not much asbestos here, and be nonchalant about wearing an air pack, but it's killing us. Another one is PAHs. They're known carcinogenics, and they've been found as a byproduct of the burning of tar, and also from rubbers. So car fires, burning tires, hoses, the smoke coming from roofing is full of these things. Every residential or structural fire that breaches a roof, or that we cut a vent hole, dropping that chunk of roof down into the fire, we're burning more of this tar, producing carcinogens. OSHA says 3/4 part per million. In fires, they're up above 20 parts per million. Studies were conducted in the New York, Boston, and Los Angeles fire departments, specifically in regards to diesel exhaust emissions. And they found firefighters had an incredible exposure. We fire up a fire engine in an apparatus bay that spews that exhaust fumes out into the building. Well, this is the same building we live in, and it's been found the particulates from diesel exhaust stay in the atmosphere for a long time. So you're sleeping and eating your dinner, but during that whole time, you're sucking these things in. They're attacking your body. This is an in-house carcinogen that we can control.
Cancer-causing substances can get into our bodies through our lungs and our skin. If that happens, we have an increased risk of developing cancer at some point in our lives. Research has shown that firefighters with more than 10 years service can be up to 4 times as likely to develop certain cancers than the general population. Firefighters have an increased likelihood of contracting brain cancer, like Mark Noble did, which is 3.5 times higher than that of the general population. For kidney cancer, it's 4 times higher. For non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, bladder cancer and leukemia, it's 3 times higher. And for testicular cancer, it's 2.5 times. Firefighters are also more likely to be affected by breast cancer, a cancer that affects both men and women.
The union is pleased to be an integral part, along with the fire service, of the program being undertaken to reduce firefighters' risk from cancer-causing agents. Many of the things we need to do are simple, but involve a change in the way you as firefighters historically do things. There's a perception in our profession that a dirty face or uniform is a badge of honour and shows that you've done a hard day's work. In reality, it's a badge of unsafe practice and a sign that we haven't looked after our gear properly. Exposure means being in the presence of a cancer-causing substance. Contamination means taking that substance away with you, and that's the part that really matters. It's essential that firefighters wear their gear correctly and properly clean themselves and their equipment after a fire or similar call. The increased risk of cancer can never be eliminated from the firefighter's job description, but it can be reduced. And every one of us has a part to play in that.
So, what can we do to limit our exposure to and contamination by carcinogens? Firstly, diesel exhaust can be controlled. The fire service is part-way through a work program of installing exhaust extraction solutions in all fire stations. Your responsibility as a firefighter is to make sure you use whatever system you have in your station every time the truck's engine is running. Using breathing apparatus is probably the #1 thing that reduces exposure to carcinogens, as our lungs are 300 times more efficient than any other pathway at getting things into our body. Earlier, we told you about the risks from exposure to asbestos, chemicals and known carcinogens such as benzene and PAHs. Using BA can dramatically reduce exposure to these and many other carcinogens. Too often, we remove our BA mask during overhaul, fire investigation, or when entering a room that has light smoke. It takes discipline and energy to wear masks and carry around heavy BA, but it's definitely worth the extra effort. As we mentioned before, another way we're exposed to cancer-causing substances is absorption through our skin. Many of the same substances deposited on our PPE can be absorbed through our skin. It's vital to wear the proper PPE all of the time. We think of our gloves as protection from heat and fire, but they're also just as important for protection from carcinogens. It's very easy to remove our gloves while cleaning up after a fire because they can sometimes get in the way or because they've got wet or hot. Wearing them, as well as the rest of your PPE, helps to protect you and your skin. It's also vital to have a shower and wash your uniform after a fire. If you don't, you're continuing to expose yourself to carcinogens and possibly exposing your fellow firefighters. Properly washing yourself will help to remove cancer-causing agents and help protect you from continued exposure.
So that need, as someone told me before, to have a shower is reinforced by this result. Okay? Because you do not want this staying on your skin. Okay? On average, it takes about 5 hours for half of it to get through your skin. So if you think about the start of a shift, I've been to a house fire, it was particularly smoky and I got an exposure like this particular firefighter. Okay? I don't have a shower till I go home 10 hours later. 3/4 of it will be through my skin. Okay? Now I want to minimize those opportunities for exposure, and a shower is the really easiest way. If I shower within an hour of that particular fire, I will stop 90% of that PAH getting through by doing nothing else than having a simple shower. So first rule, and I cannot emphasize this enough, you must don your SCBA. You are dicing with your career and your future by not doing it. If those numbers don't tell you that the environment is nasty and you didn't know that beforehand, you do now, you've got to protect your lungs. The research is telling you all of this stuff about occupational cancers with respect to firefighters and their long-term health is telling you the lungs, respiratory inflammation is the likely route that things get in. You've got to protect it. Your BA is pretty good. Okay? You've got to establish your control zones, you've got to enforce them. No, it's okay, I'll just walk through the smoke. No, it's a hot zone, in inverted commas, for a reason. There's smoke. I do not want you breathing it in. Okay? I can't tell you to do that, but the group here can, all your peers. You are great for your peers. Okay? So don't stand in the smoke is the other one. Even though I got BA on, it's not cool to stand in the smoke. Because now I can tell you whatever's in the smoke is probably going to deposit on your clothing. Not all of it, but representatively, which means I'm now going to have to clean your clothing at some point. Okay? But there are some times where you have no choice. That does not take away that need to make those operational decisions to best manage the incident. But now you can make an even more informed decision. By putting someone there, I know what's going to happen. They're going to get a bit more stuff on their clothing. They're going to be more exposed, and they also need to protect their lungs. Your protective clothing, okay, offers some protection against the ingress of airborne contaminants. The protection factors are not bad, okay? They're not perfect, they are not a gas suit, okay, and you're not likely to get one for fires, okay? But given they really weren't intended to protect you against any smoke, they actually do that by mistake.
The risks firefighters take really go unnoticed because the media surrounds us daily. The increased risk of cancer that firefighters face is not seen by the media and often not even seen by firefighters themselves. People don't see firefighters breathing in harmful chemicals or being exposed to countless other cancer-causing substances. What can't be seen by the naked eye are most often the scariest things. The media doesn't report on firefighters dying of cancer. They ignore it, and so do many firefighters, and that needs to change.
Knowing what I know now, after all of this, would I still do this job? Yep, I sure would. It's the best job in the world. But you know what? I'd do it differently. I'd wear my air pack probably a little more. I'd make sure that exhaust hose was hooked up on those dark and stormy nights when I wanted to get back to bed after the 5th run in the middle of the night. I'd do that. I'd try to take better care of my other firefighters. So yeah, it's a great job, And yes, we put ourselves at greater risk, but let's at least try to control those risks that we do have control of. You know what's going on with me, and my prognosis has gotten better with my continued chemotherapy. Every course I take, life expectancy goes up. So, I mean, it looks like I'm going to see my younger kid graduate from high school. I didn't think I was going to see that. I tell you, it's hard watching these rigs drive down the street. I still want to be a firefighter.
Hi, I'm Paul Smith and I'm managing the Fire Services program to reducing firefighters' cancer risk. Our approach is to raise the awareness of all of our people to the dangers associated with exposure to known carcinogens. That's what this video is about. We're aiming to minimise the level of exposure at its source through education and providing appropriate PPE. We'll also work on taking all practical steps to isolate contaminants to the site of origin. Reviewing appliance design will ensure the highest level of cab hygiene possible through reducing contamination in our vehicles. And we'll improve station design to allow segregation of clean and contaminated work processes. Most importantly, there are simple measures that you can introduce. If you don't have to be in the smoke, don't be in it. Protect your lungs, don't get into your truck dirty, and wash as soon as you can after the fire. We're going to give you the tools to help you be safer, but it's ultimately up to you to keep yourself safe. You've seen what to do, now go and talk about it with your team and then let us know what you think. Email your ideas to firefightercancer@fire.org.nz. We're looking forward to hearing from you.